A very good morning to you all. Good morning. I'm Chamberlain, so welcome to Sunrise Daily.
And I'm Ayo Makine. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Okay, yes, indeed. At least the third mainland bridge has been opened. So I think it was earlier than scheduled. They were just a little bit ahead of time. So we're hoping it will be the same thing for, of course, you know how it is.
The full opening or the...
No, I mean the
partial opening.
The Lagos about the end, you know,
Okay.
those were the two areas
yes.
that they said they were going to, because they wanted to do some casting and they needed room to ensure that those things just go on well. So those are some of the issues and how we expect them to play out as we proceed. Yes, it's the end of the year, and what a year it's been challenging to almost everyone. We've had to adjust in one way or the other. But, you know, we keep asking ourselves here, look, yes, we've dealt, we've grappled with this, we're still here, but lessons, that was important. And the thing is, it's not just about talking about those lessons, it's how what we see and how we internalize them and use those lessons moving forward as a result of what we see us do. Those are going to be very important in the years ahead because, look, the world has changed now, believe it or not.
Especially because we have various sectors, you know, that make up our personality as a nation.
Yeah.
So the earlier we pay attention to those, you know, I think the better it is for us. It's not just you know, we have the right books, we have the right brains, we have the right, virtually everything. The meat of the matter is how you utilize what you have.
Yeah.
You know, everything has gone virtual now, even newspapers.
Well, we have Dr. Marcel Bamole here with us. He's the news editor of the Guardian newspaper. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today. How does that the dailies cope with some of this? Your perspective, for instance.
In terms of, thank you, Chamberlain, and glad to be here. I think, just like Ayo pointed out, there's a new normal, and everybody is learning fast and adjusting fast and moving on with the times and trend. Nothing is going to ever be the same again. Everything, you know, has changed, and I think what has not changed actually is our attitude to, you know, our attitude to changing things around us, doing things the way they should be done. You know, we still think that, talking about our leaders, the public sector, the public life, they still need to understand that, you know, that's.
And speaking about doing things a little differently, your daily, you're doing things differently this morning. It's not the usual headline. Look at The Guardian, for instance. Person of the Year, our messengers of hope. This is different from the usual banner headline, you flush left or flush right.
What or who said what.
So, what informed this?
Thank you very much. Actually, and thank you for that. I take that as a compliment. Actually, The Guardian has been doing things differently, that's why we call it flagship. You know, I always been the flagship.
I like that. Nice.
Yes, of course. So it's not new to us. It's a game that we are used to, and the person of the year, we call it the man of the year. Actually, you know, because of the trend that this is the person of the year, this is a man of the year. Whether man or woman is a man of the year, not in terms of gender.
Yeah.
You know, actually, we started in 1987. Our first man of the year was Olusegun Obasanjo in 1987, who became the critic in chief of the then military administration, military government at the time. You know, and the Guardian honored him as the man of the year for that, for standing out, because it was unusual at the time for an ex-president, you know, to come out publicly and challenge one in power and all of that. And he did that, and being an ex-military head of state at the time.
Well, was it very dangerous for him?
Yes, of course.
It almost cost him his life.
It was a very, very dangerous. It cost him incarceration. It almost cost him his life. Cost him the death of his best friend at the time.
Yes, but actually, that's a game that Obasanjo is very used to. You know him, and he has kept faith with us since then. You see that he has maintained that he was against the administration of Jonathan, and which actually led to this. And even now, he's still against the sitting government, the sitting president. You know, I think he has been consistent with his policy of putting every government on its toes, But talking about the man of the year thing.
Who's this person of the year now?
Yeah, the person of the year actually is unique, like The Guardian, it's unique because, we talk about the NSAS protesters. The NSAS protests, actually what happened this year has never happened before, it looks like.
Some said they didn't see it coming.
That they didn't see it coming, and it's the youths and being championed by the youths themselves. It gives an impression, it's still the new normal that we're talking about. It's kickstarted a new phase, and the government actually never expected it. And I tell you that going forward, this government already knows that it's
not the first time we'll have that kind of spontaneous reaction from the people. You remember the June 12th saga?
Yes.
You knew that was also spontaneous. It lasted so many years until the military had to leave. You remember the fuel price increase protests of 2012? It was also spontaneous.
Yes.
And then this one. So
they are different. These are different scenarios actually. Different, maybe slightly the same purpose, but different models of execution. You can, if you talk about the June 12th, that was a political move. That was actually a political move. It's actually politically.
But this is different.
Yes, but this is different. Coming from youths, coming from the social circles, and coming from the youths themselves, and coming from being triggered virtually, with no support. Talking about fuel hike in 2012? Yes, you could see that was. It's the element of politics there. You see, opposition people coming out, and then even though those non-partisan people came to join, but you see, you could read the spirit of that. But this is actually it has a national outlook, and coming from the vulnerable youths, those who hitherto never, stood up to power, to those in power to say enough is enough. And ever since then, this government actually, you can see that this government is becoming seemingly responsive to.
Question now is, how are you going to honor this person?
So now we are honoring, as you see that like I said, the flagship has been doing that. Actually, the first to start that in Nigeria, and other newspapers have started joining the fray. And it has been unique. Last year, for example, you saw that we did Arikena was actually Chimbori Kwa was actually the African Union representative to the permanent representative to the U.S. Was honored as the man of the year for the Guardian. So it's been not just nationalistic outlook that we have, but we've been doing that globally, looking at Guardian being actually Afrocentric, Africa, not just Nigeria. So we, by the grace of God, we've kept faith with that. So we don't really look at we look at intrinsic value of what we do, not really about personality, wealth, or whatever, but look at value you add to society.
There's going to be diverse reaction now, normally, as it is with every item or every story, every article, every piece, as it were. So this will have its impact. It could, and then the honoring them, it could embolden them. Many will say, "Wait a minute, are you urging them to go?"
That's development. Actually, that's development journalism. Everything that one does has the Guardian, based on our policy and philosophy, we practice development journalism. We help to change things and make things better. As a newspaper, that's what every newspaper does, actually. Every medium, whether electronics or whatever. But in this case, what we've just done is to recognize the fact that there is a wave of change triggered by the youths, and that action will ensure that things never remain the same. The spontaneous reaction triggered by these youths just to end police brutality actually shows that Nigerians are getting ready to say, no, we're not going to take this bullshit anymore. Enough is enough.
Who knows how it will culminate in
So we're encouraging good things, actually. It's like, pardon?
They should, it would dovetail into 2023. This kind of energy, this kind of action, whether the frustrations or whatever it is, if they could channel it towards ensuring that whatever views they have, they make it count in more ways than one.
Yeah, that is actually the spirit behind this honor, this recognition that are given to the youths of Nigerian youths who came out to say, end police brutality. 2023, you could see that it's not going to be the same. Like, it's not going to be the same way it happened in 2019. That's more consciousness triggered by this. The politicians are even more conscious now. They are talking, and discussions now have changed to who is going to be candidate. Not going to be more than 40, 50 years, not going to be more than this. That wasn't the discussion in 2019. Right now, political parties are looking at age. Even politicians are coming out now to say, I'm less than 60, I'm this, I'm whatever. I support youth, and whatever. Even the budget, everything that is being done by this government right now, that trying to link it to youth. Any policy government is doing now, they're going to say, for youths.
And talking about the budget,
just bandwagon.
Talking about the budget, that's the way the Daily Trust leads this morning. By the way, when you talk about people coming out and saying I'm less than 60, I remember a political party that had a youth leader that was over 70, but maybe it was a youth at heart or something. The Daily Trust newspaper this morning leads with 72 hours to end of year. Buhari yet to assent to 2021 budget. January to December cycle it ought to be threatened. We're studying document, that's according to the presidency. What do you make of this?
Yeah,
the president has not signed the budget.
I have a lot of friends who, I call them not just media friends, our sources in the media, very informed sources, economists, experts, industry experts, who say they've ceased for a long time to comment on the budget, Nigeria budget, when we talk about Nigeria's budget, because it's more or less a ritual. Wow. You see, budget actually, this year is a bit different because it's even a bit earlier than usual. It used to dovetail into perhaps the new year, not signed, sometimes March, sometimes April, we're still arguing about budgets and whatever. So it's usual. The issue of signing or not signing, for me, I'm not really interested about that. The issue right now should be the 2020 budget that has come to conclusion. Now, unsuccessful conclusion, if you like. What has come out of it? To what extent? You need to review the capital budget, the recurrent expenditure, the capital expenditure, and all of those. There's no accountability. There is no transparency. There is no, we need to, by this time, we should actually be talking about what has been spent.
Well, maybe if we interrogated it, maybe we'll find out. I mean, for instance, the budget office will probably tell you, look, you're not correct in saying that because you haven't asked them for the document. Now, if you could, maybe if they could tell you that if you ask for the information, you'll get it from them.
Well, it's there. It's not really about information or not. The information is there, actually, but they will say that publicly. But when you get to even deploy the Freedom of Information Act to get to the nitty-gritty of all of those, they have a way of concealing most of those things. Even when you're given the documents, to the uninformed, to the uninitiated, if you don't know how to really, some journalists who don't really know how to interpret financial documents. Budget, for example, reporting, budget coverage of reporting budgets is a specialty. It's actually a part of business reporting, economic reporting. Some journalists go for training, even overseas, to study how to report company, audited company accounts and all of those, how to find out hidden things there. So when you get a budget, for example, a budget document, it's so heavy, it's so voluminous and all of those things. But if you understand the different sectors and different nuances and all of those areas, as a journalist, as a reporter, you get stories. I tell my reporters every day, I said, with the budget, even this 2021 budget proposal, is a proposal until it's signed. The bill now, once it's signed, becomes a law and you can implement. So if you look at that, for a whole year, you can keep your newspaper, you can be on the front page reporting for just that document alone, following the money, following the release, following the expenditure, following the challenges, even in release and expenditure and everything, and implications of what has happened in 2021. But if you look at this 2021 budget, you see that there could be replication, in fact, duplication, of some of the things done in previous years and all of those. So
all right, we need to move quick now. There's quite a lot of ground to cover.
Especially because it's getting interesting.
Yeah. Well, take a look. That's it? Is it?
Well, let's leave it there for.
Okay, look at Vanguard next. Fake COVID-19 test results on sale. Lagos State government raises alarm. 236,212 tested so far, sets up 10 oxygen centers in high-burden local government areas. It goes on and on. But this is a shout. Fake COVID-19 test results.
Not just the tests now, not
The
fake
results.
COVID-19. The
The
results on
results.
sale. Wow.
Well, Chamberlain, this is not surprising. That's Nigeria for you. We've always had that kind of, for everything that is novel, everything that is novel, you have a pollution like that. You remember some travelers, those coming to Nigeria who have been complaining of issues, even when they say you have to get your result before test, before you board flights and all of those, or whatever. When you come in, you can't go back because you haven't the result. And a lot of corruption around that. So, and given the fact that, thank God, the current government is actually, the stance of this current government is anti-corruption. They are actually, I think, so it's something that should be very, very important to them. You see, like I said, I'm not moved by that because there are worse things happening there. So selling those things, if you go everywhere. Look, this morning as I was coming, I passed through the toll gate at the airport there. You see people, they'll queue up, they will like two people, staff of a government agency or whatever, they always stay there. Somebody will give you pay money, 300 naira, you pay, and somebody else will stand far away and pretend that they won't give you the ticket. So another person will give you the ticket, another person will collect money. So the essence is for you not to collect the ticket, and all of that. So in every facet of our existence, of our economy, there is corruption, and I think, I thank God government is working hard to really address that.
The thing about this COVID is that that's why different airlines across the world will tell you, we don't accept, in fact, there are some airlines that don't accept COVID results from NHS. Some don't accept from certain areas. So it's all to ensure that, globally they try and mitigate whatever damage or whatever loopholes that exist. So the same thing should apply here. But good to see that they even detected it in the first place. So give them kudos for that as much as we can. 30 million Nigerians affected as learning poverty rate rises to 63% in Nigeria. Others due to COVID-19, says World Bank. So just to have that in one. But this is a matter you also spoke about some time ago, Ayo. Apapa gridlock. Lagos takes over traffic management from Presidential Task Force. That's ascribed to Sanwo-Olu. It means they were not doing a good job of it. For them to have taken over. What does that mean?
The tenure of one of them has expired. The Paifa tenure had expired. So
why couldn't they have plans to just put in place another?
Well, I think maybe because it's in Lagos, but hey, I'm not the guest here. Come on.
I think I spoke with you about this
yes,
a couple of minutes ago before we came to the studio here. That the problem with the Apapa gridlock, I think government, if it wants to address it, can address it.
What's going on?
It's. I think in line with what we are rubbing minds on this, in line with what we discussed. I think it's about entrenched interest. You see.
There you go.
Yeah. Who owns those tankers? Who support them? Who do they work for? Who do they settle? Who do they, all of these, as long as our politicians are those in public sector, they tell us the truth and they can address it. I remember a time the president was coming and
it was clear.
Yes, it was clear. Everything was
interest or no interest.
Good. So you can guess.
That speaks volumes. So we'll leave it at that. Northern groups can. SMBLF, that's the Southern Middle Belt leaders.
That's the Kuka controversy.
Yeah, right? Did you see this catching on this way?
Yeah, yes. I must Kuka, Bishop Kuka has been, like I said earlier, has been consistent, also with it. But what baffles me actually, I think we should be interested in the polarization of our socio-political space. If you look at what happens, I don't know why sometimes a criticism of a sitting government, they sectionalize it. It's interesting that even Kuka himself is coming from the north. He's a northern a bishop, and coming out to say that. So I don't know whether it's religious, whether it's sectional, it's tribal politics that we're talking about here. If a northern bishop says something, I don't know why a block of a northern block will come out and say, no, hey, you are calling for change of government. Murik will speak, this one will speak. But I've seen over the years, in the last 4 to 5 years, a situation where everything about our national life has been reduced to other religious or ethnic. But I don't see this as ethnic or religious issue. I see this as a man calling for change, who wants Nigeria to be better, who wants government to listen and do things differently.
Some may say
it's unfortunate, actually.
Some of those criticisms may be double standard on those part, because
Yes.
I mean, if they reduce it to regions or things like that, when it comes to other things, some regions are worse off than all the others. So why don't they see things from that perspective? If they thought that they wanted the level playing field across regions, but
especially because a northern emir had also spoken
even the Sultan.
It's a democracy. I dare you contend.
Okay. The Nigerian Tribune has this one. No, we didn't apologize to Buhari over invitation.
Oops.
That's according to the House of Representatives. The story is on page 4, of course. This is a rebuttal of what people were saying, that maybe because they invited the president at the time and they were compelled to apologize. Well, this catches your attention.
No, thank God. Thank God the man has, it's your word against his.
So is he going to appear?
Well, it's that's the problem we have right now with the National Assembly. I think we have a legislature that is not really doing its job as a watchdog, because the checks and balances, the concept of checks and balances is that, okay, the legislature should be actually independent of the executive. What we have, remember, even how did they come to power? How did the leadership of the National Assembly emerge? It was a political party meeting, going to pay visit to Aso Rock to determine, to get endorsements and all of those things. And by the end of this, okay, this is the man, the executive arm.
That's why people think they are rubber stamp.
Yeah, exactly. People think they are, but they shouldn't. It shouldn't be that way. So, anything, the beginning of anything is as important as the end and what it finally turns out to be. So I think we're getting it wrong when we think that a political party in power should, of course, they should have a say, but it shouldn't be that public. That razzmatazz about who endorses what and what. It should be a private affair, the affair of the National Assembly, and not directly. Yes, they have a role, political party, they have a role, but not to dramatize it the way it's done. So I think that we are paying the price now, because who pays the pipe?
Well, let's quickly look at the others. NewsDirect, anti-Buhari comments. Catholic Church, Arewa thief youths in war of words. Thief, Arewa youths call for Kuka's prosecution. And you ask yourself, look, how is it an anti-Buhari?
The same point I was talking about, Laura, is in terms of reducing a serious national issue to groups, and you talk about northern groups. I would have been happier, or whatever. It would have made more sense if maybe it's coming from his constituency, or coming from unexpected quarters. But it's becoming expected when anything against the sitting president, then somebody from the region or groups from the region where the president comes out to say, no, don't say that. I think we should rise above. Even the NSAS protest that has happened is enough lesson for our politicians and everybody to
hopefully they learn.
Change.
Papa Gridlock, we will fight big men, scapegoats of defaulters.
It's the same thing you have on the front page of the Daily Independent. Lagos ports, congestion, bribery, storage, costs, worsen importers' woes. We go on and on.
So what kind of impact did that have? I thought there was some action previously. So does it mean that all the groups they had before didn't achieve? Because if this is
again, don't forget what I said, what I recall from what Mr. Poifa said. Look, too many interests in the ports. There is no central controlling, no central coordinating body.
And another thing, if you like me, if you permit me to add here, the real issue actually, apart from I'm talking about that's immediate issue, but perhaps the remote issue is the fact that we just centralize everything and in Lagos and Apapa, whatever. What is happening to other ports in the country? the Ones,
from
the
information,
Calabar, the whatever, and even the
information that has been put out
Onitsha
also, yeah.
and the rest. You have a lot of food that could be dredged and made more. You can imagine when all the goods that you consume in this country come from Apapa. So why can't you have gridlock?
Well, whatever that's been done will be weighed against the results that we're seeing.
Absolutely.
So until the results change, whatever they say they've done will always be questioned.
Because what it means actually is that the man in Calabar, the man in Onitsha, the man in Sokoto who imports, we get the products from here and move all the trailers, everything before it gets there, before it to be consumed there, they must pass through here.
And it will impact on the cost.
Yes, exactly.
As well.
All right.
So there you go. Dr. Marcel Bamalu is the news editor of the Guardian newspapers. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you, Chamberlain.
All right, we're back in a moment. Stay with us.
Well, it's been an interesting 2020 and continuing our review of various sectors of the Nigerian state. We want to take a look at what the economy has been in the year 2020. Two gentlemen joined us this morning to look at the issues. Professor Oyebanji Oyelaran Oyeyinka is the SSA on industrialization to the president of the Africa Development Bank, as well as Marcel Okeke, who is an economist. Both men join us virtually from Ibadan and Lekki, respectively. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Prof, I'd like to begin with you. You had this, let me begin with your organization, of course. You had this outlook over the year, over 2020, and then the real GDP growth was projected to rise to 2.9% in 2020 and 3.3% in 2021. But then in the wake of COVID-19, you came up with a supplementary document that said that Nigeria was likely to go minus 4.4. And then, of course, that information also came. Would you say that, what's your take on both the projections and the realities that eventually came up?
Thank you so much for inviting me. What we had was a projection. What the reality is what COVID brought to us. As long as COVID is there, we are going to be having challenges. What actually happened, as you all know very well, is that in the second and third quarter, Nigeria had a decline of close to 3.6, which is close to the 4% that was projected. In other words, GDP declined by 1 trillion second quarter and 670 billion in the third quarter, respectively. This is huge. This happened because of the drop in oil prices. Remember, we lost 60% of the price of oil, and by April, actually, as I jokingly told someone, the price of oil was close to that of a cup of coffee. So this was a huge one. In fact, the drop in second quarter alone is probably equal to the economies of some countries, Sierra Leone, Gambia, and all that. So this wasn't a small thing. There were projections all around those 4%, and I think this is fairly correct. What we had, but the more important issue actually is also the health crisis that we had, and which continues to impact on the economic crisis. Economic continues to weaken, and leading also, of course, to other social crises, such as food shortage, decreased government revenue. Plans have been thrown totally out of the window. So it's a global crisis, as the CBN governor was saying in that news right now. All countries have been impacted. There are very severe consequences of this particular COVID and the subsequent economic crisis. Before COVID, we were projecting that close to 4% of Nigerians were living below the national poverty line, according to the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. More Nigerians are going to go under. In fact, the projection is that there will be another 20 million people by 2022 if current trend continues. So our role now as a country and leadership is to find mitigating measures to ensure that this doesn't happen to us. The worrying part actually for me is the accompanying food insecurity that has attended to all of this. You know what has happened in the northwest and the northeastern part of Nigeria has added actually. So the crisis we all face in 2020 wasn't just about, for Nigeria, is a trinity of evil. There was the COVID crisis, there followed the economic crisis, and of course also the insecurity crisis that we are experiencing. So we will need all that we could muster to ensure that Nigerians are taken out of all this and go back fast into recovery as quickly as possible.
Well, Mr. Okeke, how do you open on this matter? Well, minus 4.4 was projected, but minus 3.6 was what we had. Could it have been better, or could it have been avoided? Mr. Okeke, that's for you.
Is that my question?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me on. It couldn't have been avoided because, like my colleague had just said, the coronavirus pandemic was and still is a global issue, a global health and economic challenge. Nigeria could not and cannot and is not immune to its impact. Export product of Nigeria, which is oil, once it hit the price of oil, it has hit the economy of the country, right at the head. And so once the price of oil crashed, it's like the entire economy crashed. And then with other, concomitant effects of collapse in price of oil, because when price of oil collapses, it's like the entire economy of Nigeria has collapsed. And so there was no way it could have been avoided. But having said that, if Nigeria had, in the past, been saving for the rainy day, assuming we have been investing our, oil money prudently over the past, decades, maybe the impact would have been somehow attenuated, reduced rather than what we are having now. But because over the years we have been so not frugal, but we have been so just spending money anyhow, and maybe in line with our constitution, we say that whatever we realize from oil must be shared. And we kept sharing and sharing and sharing. And that kind of consumption, which makes our economy so much import dependent. So once the price of oil crashes, and because we have no buffer, nothing is saved, we now have to experience the full impact, the full negative impact of the price of oil that came with the coronavirus pandemic around this time last year. So the pandemic is with us for 1 year, and rather than giving up, we are now hearing terrible stories. So it couldn't have been avoided. Let me put it that way. Thank you.
Well, Professor Oyeyinka, let me ask you. Now, today the dailies are quoting IMF that poverty rising to 63% in Nigeria as a result of COVID. But you did mention in passing how we've seen food shortage affecting several other things. Now, from what you've seen, the kind of efforts that we're putting in place, are we doing the right things to address those attendance challenges, as it were?
Well, government has taken some measures, and we were one of the first actually to, identify this COVID. Nigeria was one of the first to actually lock down and taking certain measures. But as Mr. Okeke said, the point is you are who you are. You can only give what you have. Nigerians' economy and assets have been so constrained by our historical dependence on oil. What we have done at the fiscal level and other options is, try to manage the COVID issue, try to do a number of macroeconomic management issues to continue to keep what we have, which is really little, reprioritizing public expenditure to protect what we have. What I will say to answer your question directly is it's a historical issue. I think Nigeria has punched below its weight over a long period of time. The dependence on oil has been a disaster for Nigeria. Let's just put it very bluntly. And this speaks to the issue of how we view ourselves. Nigeria needs to diversify very fast. Nigeria will need to achieve double-digit growth. It's almost like a fairy tale if you look at where we are now. But I don't see anything impossible. If we continue this way, if we get a little relief after COVID, and we continue on this path of simply just depending on oil, we're going to, the 60% poverty basket that you mentioned is real. As a matter of fact, the data that we have is that by 2030, 50% of all the poorest people in the world, will be in only 3 countries in Africa: Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Democratic Republic of Congo. This is really a disgrace, looking at the assets we have. And inequality is also widening. In fact, the most frightening part of poverty is the widening inequality, where people perceive themselves as marginalized in a society where they see, swimming in an ocean of wealth, as it were. We have rich agricultural wealth, we have rich mineral wealth, but yet we persist in simply just relying on one commodity. Nigeria has been a mono-commodity economy for too long. And everyone comes and say, "Oh, we're going to diversify." All we do is talk. And I think we really need to speak to ourselves very clearly. I agree with my colleague that yes, the corona pandemic was something that was unavoidable, and in some way we escaped the huge part of it. When you in comparative terms with what's happening in Europe and America and all other places now. But we cannot ride our luck. What we see with the young people recently is a signal to us that we're also living above our means. When you look at the capital expenditure compared with the current for this year, for example, we are about to spend over 40% on recurrent expenditure and borrowing almost around the same amount of money. So Nigeria is living above its means, basically. We've lived above our means for so long. Governance is too expensive. The kinds of ways that we are the leadership in our country, we live our lives, is too much compared with when you look at the kind of poverty you see on the street in Nigeria. So you ask me, have we done enough? I think we need to do more. We need to do more in terms of showing leadership, prudence. We need to do more in diversifying the economy of Nigeria. We need to do more in exploiting those potentials of our people. As my boss, Dr. Adeshina, always says, that nobody is potential. You can talk potential all you want. Nobody is potential. Nobody can drink oil. You have to convert that oil revenue into something practical. Infrastructure, to social services, health, education, for people to appreciate. So, yes, we have probably escaped the worst of the pandemic, but we are getting the results in terms of rising poverty, rising inequality, and the degradation of the quality of life of Nigerians. It's going to be a challenging year, challenging set of years for us ahead, unless we diversify the Nigerian economy.
Well, Mr. Okeke, I'd like you to follow up on this, but from this angle. if we do not, first of all, what do we have to do? And what is the consequence if we do not take those actions urgently?
Thank you very much. My colleague that has just spoken said a lot of relevant things. We must be talking about diversification of the economy, but I want to qualify to say effective diversification of the economy. I use effective because successive governments over the years has made the same song of diversification, and each one claims to be diversifying the economy. But effective diversification, would have happened only when you diversify and have a lot to export, to add to our foreign exchange inflow, augment, or in fact, displace oil.
Just one moment. This is something that we have been talking about for a long time, just as you said, and Prof has also. Well, just one moment. What are these? If we can hazard some specifics. For instance, we have been talking about, focusing on agriculture for as far back as I can remember, since I was in secondary school. Now, so many people would look at that and say, okay, successive governments since the Second Republic have been making efforts to focus on agriculture, for instance, because we see what agriculture did for us in the First Republic. Now, what are the inhibitions for the Second Republic and the Third Republic and the Fourth Republic that we're in now, that's going into its 21st year, already in its 21st year? What are those things that have inhibited us from effectively, to use your word, diversifying into agriculture, improving our production and productivity capacity?
Again, thank you very much. The kind of agriculture you are talking about is the one that contributes a lot to GDP. But when it comes to money, producing something to export, to earn foreign exchange, to help oil, we have problems. Because what we are talking about, and we are talking about, is likely subsistence farming. Because of our land use decree or act, people who want to farm, for example, don't have large expanse of land to farm. You have storage facility challenge, so that even those who farm on commercial, scale, have problem with where to stop. We don't have any arrangement in place, for value addition, so that if you produce your cassava, how will it be utilized here? How will it be improved upon so that it becomes exportable, not in raw form? If you produce your palm kernel, how will it be, processed so that there will be value addition and it becomes exportable? If you produce your cocoa, how do you add value? How do you improve it instead of exporting raw cocoa? All these have to be done on commercial scale. So we're talking about commercial farming, so that people come into it and mean business rather than just survival. As it is now over the years, what we are seeing is subsistence farming and a lot of constraints, because government is not giving the necessary incentive or encouragement, to people who are there. Because of the oil economy and oil culture we have, we all are soaked. In quote, we all are soaked into the oil mindset, because that is where any and everybody can make easy money. Because when you go into agriculture, there are all kinds of hazards, and government has not done much, to handle these hazards, and so on and so forth. So that is why you have not gotten the expected result. But we have been pushed into a very tight corner, and that is why we are still talking about this effective diversification. And until and unless that is done, we are still going to have this kind of challenge. If you look back in the 60s and even 50s, where we have diversification in this area of agriculture, you have cocoa, you have palm oil, you have granite pyramid, you have rubber, you have cotton, and so on and so forth. So, and all these things were being exported. So any one of them that has any challenge in the global market, the other one will do well. And when you net off, you see that the economy is still doing well, because of the variety of things being exported. But this time, all those things kind of fizzled out. Where is the granite pyramid? Where is the cocoa and cocoa house and cocoa everything? Where is the palm oil plantation? Where is the rubber plantation? Where is the cotton plantation? and so on and so forth. You know, like my colleague said, we have all kinds of solid minerals. Why are they not being mined? Why are they not being, you know, you have gold somewhere. Why are we not going into it? So that we make a lot of money, and we mean it seriously, not lip service, as is currently the case. I'm sorry to say that. And so on and so on. So there's a lot we can do and change our situation. Thank you.
Well, Prof, you know, if those stats don't give us a wake-up call or give our leaders a wake-up call, I wonder what will. Because if by 2030, 50% of the world's poorest people will be found in countries including Nigeria, well, that could only mean that, look, no matter how much they try to keep the people down or prevent anything from happening, you will always have people who will hit the streets. If people are hungry, there's no stopping to what they will want to do to get themselves going. Now, after is going to kick on very soon. Manufacturers have highlighted what they want to see the authorities do so that we're not on the back foot. Who knows if we will put some of those things in place. What do we need to be doing now to ensure that we are not on the back foot eventually when these things start?
So let me follow up a little bit on the some granular details of this issue of diversification in answer to your question. For example, Mr. Kwike talked about agriculture and our fixation or our being stuck on subsistence farming. It is the truth. And this is one of the reasons why the bank, for example, we've been promoting the special agro-industrial processing zones. No country is doing subsistence and gets rich. It's not possible. Subsistence simply means you subsist on certain things. You live, you eat, you die. No surplus to sell locally, no surplus to sell globally. So this is the problem, why we are. And the danger with those also, by the way, after independence, Nigeria was quite self-sufficient in food. And we had almost 60% of our employment actually was on export of crops. As my colleague was saying, groundnut, cocoa, and all of that. All countries started from that level, but no one stays on that level. You have to move forward. You move forward, first of all, by specializing in certain value addition. If you were producing raw cocoa, you move into producing, say, cocoa butter, into producing, say, chocolate. If you were producing cassava, you move away from just simply producing cassava to producing foods made from cassava. Flour milling, for example, it's one of the biggest business in Nigeria, but we still don't have enough. You have Nigeria still importing close to, I think, 3 billion worth of wheat. We import all manner of things that can grow anywhere. So the first thing is that we should produce enough. Africa on aggregate imports almost $60 billion of food, things that we eat. Yet we have 65% of all arable land in the world. And of course, Nigeria has a big chunk of that. So if all we do in the next 5 years is ensure that we don't import anything to eat anymore, we'll have gone a long way to solve the issue of food security. And they say once you feed somebody, you remove anger from their lives. The second level, of course, is now to convert those raw agricultural products into exportable high-value products. Nigeria still imports starch, industrial starch, all manner of starch. We import all manner of things that could be made locally. So let us, first of all, add value to agricultural products. And then, of course, we then move into other, what you might call product diversification from other, other raw material or minerals or whatever it is. Let me give an example. In the early 60s, 70s, South Korea started with, simply just doing cotton, textile, and so forth.
Pardon
yes.
me, please, but we need to go to break. But we'll come back and allow you to continue on that train of thought. Do stay with us. All right, welcome back, Prof. Could you go ahead, please? They appear as though you were talking about the low-hanging fruits that we could easily just highlight and do as soon as possible. Go ahead, Prof. That's where you continue your line of thought, please.
So thank you so much. So I was saying that over time, what others have done is basically to move progressively into higher value added, more complex products. And you look at all the Asian countries, they did exactly the same thing. Started with textile, from cotton into garment. And I remember Nigerians used to rush over to Korea, sewing suits and so forth, where we have cotton. We are the producers of cotton. Then they moved into basic consumer goods, into computer accessories. They move into semiconductor. They move into cars. So this is the progression into value, into diversification, and of course you widen your market. So you have both product diversification and you have export and market diversification. This was what my colleague Mr. Okeke was saying. You have to go away, move away from your comfort zone, and it's not easy. You have to learn to produce it. You have to invest in it. You have to invest in infrastructure. What is Nigeria, for example, doing, importing almost 90% of its drugs? You go to the market today, you find almost 500 types of malaria drugs. What's Nigeria doing? Producing Bangladesh, India. By the way, Bangladesh produces almost 70% or 80% of its drugs now. So it's not rocket science. It's not even as rich a country as
If I can quickly follow up on that,
so what
Prof.
we're saying is that...
Just one moment, Prof, if I can quickly follow up on that. So let's talk about the real issues here. You have highlighted the things that we can easily do. And as you have also highlighted, and Mr. Okeke as well, a good number of all these things have been known to us. In terms of infrastructure, in terms of capacity, in terms of funding, what is missing? Is it the system? Is it the structure? Is it the process? What exactly is it that we are missing that hasn't allowed us to do the needful so that we can maximize this potential that, as you said, we can't take to the market?
Can I take it?
No. That's for Prof.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So I missed a bit of, but what I'm, what are we missing?
Yes.
I think our problem is systemic. First of all, you have to put out a vision. Nigeria has put out a vision several times. But who executes the vision? You need a competent bureaucracy, a non-corrupt bureaucracy. And systemically, I think we are missing that. Let's face the fact. People don't want to talk about these things, but we need to talk about it. We should look at ourselves in the mirror and talk about them. Number three is the technical aspects. Those who run industry, they need infrastructure. We haven't invested enough in infrastructure, and that's also a direct impact of the bureaucratic problem that we have in Nigeria. When someone comes to this country and they want to invest, they face all manner of human barriers. The barriers people face is not so much knowledge. There are a lot of brilliant Nigerians all over the place. You walk into a ministry and people are asking you to run around all over. They take their money and they go. Look, today, if we fix our governance problem, so much money will pour into this country. This is the truth. And so it's a systemic issue that we always try to avoid not talking about, but if we really love ourselves, we should talk about them. So that's part of it. We missed hugely in terms of the basic foundations of industrial infrastructure. The steel industry, the chemical, the petrochemical industry, and all that. My very first year in the university in Ife was the first time I heard about when you have oil, you have the basis for a complex chemical and petrochemical industry. And anyone who is a few years old, you will know that that's where we started from. The refinery, for example, is just a small part of the chemical complex. You can produce virtually anything, plastics, carbon, all kinds of things, which we have missed because we mismanage all of them. Look around you. What can you find today? Nothing. Nothing to show for almost 60 years of all the oil revenue. So at the base of everything is the leadership issue, and I'm not talking of maybe a president or whatever. It's at all levels, including the private sector. You see, when people talk about leadership, they also say, oh, maybe it's the president or something. No, it's not. It's all of us. All of us. A director, a deputy director in the ministry, whoever you are, that you are making sure an investment doesn't happen, you are just as guilty as a politician. And this is the truth that we must face. So, yes, we look at which infrastructure do we have. You can't drive on roads. A friend was coming to visit me the other day from Abeokuta to Ibadan. Here they spend almost 3-4 hours. You are coming from Lagos, Ibadan. That used to take us 50 minutes in those days. Now, you don't know when you're going to get here. And Nigeria is now having a rail from Ibadan to Lagos, and we are celebrating a party. And when others are making bullet trains, are moving to the next level technologies. So I think we really need to reflect very clearly on our failure so that we can begin to configure the future properly. This is the truth. The infrastructure is not there. The governance system is missing. The leadership to actually inspire people to invest in our country. Even Nigerians don't invest here. They take the money and go take it somewhere else. Where do you find urban water today? Nobody. There's no urban water. I live in Abidjan. I don't have borehole. Electricity never disappears anytime. So this is the crux of the problem.
All right. Well, Prof, let me ask Dr. Keke about this one as well. The crucial issue of systems that you have talked about. Dr. Keke, so how do you react to this? And I'd like you to take you back in history. You would remember that in 1972, the government of Yakubu Gowon at the time set up a committee headed by Chief Jerome Udoji, to review the entire civil service structure to make it efficient at the time. Just one of the several recommendations was salary increase. One of the most important things there was to make sure that it was an efficient civil service so that it could last a lifetime, create an ombudsman and so many other things like that. That perhaps was about the only time we've ever really tried to rejig or tinker with the machinery of government, which is the civil service. If you are to take an assessment, how serious is that? Are you in line with what Prof has said, or you differ a bit? And what do we need to do to make sure that that machine, that engine of the face of government that we see is as effective as it ought to be so that we can maximize all potential?
And thank you very much again for this question. I agree in total with what my colleague Prof has said. But let me also add this. You are talking about the civil service. They are called civil servants or public, anyway, civil servants. But the thing that we coordinate or connect, all we have been saying is what is called political will. It is what is called political will. So in the past 20 to 21 years now, we have been in a democratic setting. So the politicians are in charge. The politicians are in charge. We have had one president served and gone, another one taken over, and blah, blah, blah. You know, what has changed, like you have asked? So the politicians are in charge. If you come to a ministry, for instance, the minister is a chief executive officer. The palm selects and others below him or her are civil servants. You understand? And so they take order from that politician, that is the CEO. And that now dovetails into what my colleague has said about leadership. When we talk about the lack of leadership or failure of leadership, we are not talking about the president or presidency. We are talking about leadership at all levels. you know. But because the system is corrupt, like he also said, it's like every person is feathering his or her own nest to the detriment of the, you know, the economy or Nigeria as an entity. And that's what has been happening. Okay, but the other issue, the other straw that appears to be breaking the camel's back when it comes to this issue of economy is this level of insecurity in the land. Like he has said, Nigerians no longer feel comfortable investing here. Who will feel comfortable investing here when there's life and property is not secured? One has to be alive, you know, to talk about investment. But it's like that life is no longer guaranteed. So why will you be in an environment where your life, the safety of your life and property is not guaranteed? That's a challenge we face now. And so when you handle the issue of political will and handle the issue of insecurity, you know, and there is security in the land and safety, and people can move around freely and easily, then we start talking about the issue of infrastructure. Because even the infrastructure you're talking about are endangered. Hooligans and are going around vandalizing. You are not hearing vandalism. The entire oil infrastructure, telecom infrastructure, and so on and so forth are being vandalized. Yes, it has come to that level so that the little we have are being vandalized because of the hopelessness of unemployment, you know, and social challenges or socio-economic challenges we're having. All these things have to work together. And, you know, before we start the journey to our El Dorado or even the promised land. But these things are not there. The political will in particular is not there. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Marcel Okeke and Professor Oyebanji Oyelaran Oyeyinka. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us today on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So we'll be turning our attention now to an equally important arm of government, the judiciary. So as we review that, we'll take a look at what challenges, what have we done wrong, how do we correct it, where are we in this scheme of things. That's coming up in a moment. Return to those issues and sort them out. But look,
but you know,
when you talk about corruption in judiciary, that is a serious challenge.
You listed a number of things of course, from the report. You know, when they said some people who by sheer providence found themselves in positions of authority, positions of leadership, and flagrantly disobey court orders and boast about it. That is the fulcrum of any...
What are we doing to ourselves?
Any anarchy, you know, if one...
If people feel they can't get justice.
So if people feel that, if people have the feeling that once this person is in this position, I can't get justice, anarchy has begun. And you would know, Chamberlain, that especially from the dust of the 2019 general elections, the rule of law has been something we have repeated over and over and over again. We talked about the rule of law, we talked about, you know, electoral laws, we talked about court orders and all of that. It's just interesting. You know, part of the issues that I'm hoping that we'll be able to look at, you know, in this conversation as soon as we have Woko and Morrison Quakers with us, is to look at those laws that we're not even using. I recall listening to...
Yes.
I'll give you what I heard from Mr. Falano and I think it was Mr. Olanikwekun, both of them SAN, saying that the governors have some powers that they're not using.
For police or for power sector?
They have powers that they are not using that could empower the people in their, you know, in their states. I just saw that report and I really wanted to get to it, but of course, other matters of urgent national importance got my attention. But when I saw that headline coming from an Olanipekun, I'm not sure whether it's Olanipekun, but definitely Falana was one of them. So there are some powers, there are some provisions of the Constitution that governors have that they are not using. So in the process, while we are still waiting for constitutional amendments, and we are waiting for a new constitution, if we will ever get to that point, what is wrong with the ones that we already have now that can empower people? For instance, you would know that, I think it was the essay to the vice president on media that was telling us that, look, there are some powers that, for instance, the economy is not on an exclusive list. It is something that governors themselves can play in. So
yeah, but remember, we've also heard the governors say at different times that they are frustrated with so many things that we seem to say that we are practicing federalism, but that's on paper. They say that, look, what they see us operate is unitary system.
One of the things in that story, I think I recall now, Chamberlain agreed. The Constitution is silent on how frequently the Security Council should hold meetings, which is chaired by the president. Every state governor is a member. What they have a say in who becomes senator, who becomes the House of Representative member at the national level. What kind of interventions, what kind of conversations have they had with their representatives in the National Assembly to ensure that they amend the Constitution at least to ensure that they are part of who chooses the IG and not just the appointment by the president? Again,
when they say it on paper and in practice are two different things. Because, look, we know how some of these things work. They always want to be politically correct. If the president doesn't call for the meeting, who's going to call for the meeting and who will preside over the meeting?
Chamberlain, there lies the problem. Political. So if we politicize...
They're politicians. So they'll tell you, look that
in
is their lifeblood.
The nerve of that word political is policy. Okay? That is their job.
Yeah, but do they see it that way?
Oh, well. That's another thing altogether. It goes back to one of the issues we have raised here over and over again. How do we employ people?
Because, look, they equally will tell us the drafters of the Constitution, the intendments of the Constitution. So those are some of the challenges you see there. Because some of them, when they talk about frustrations concerning security, remember what the governors say, we are not all on the same page.
Agreed.
So for you to move forward in this, don't they need to be on the same page if the country thinks we have a challenge with addressing security issues?
Do you remember, was it 2 years ago that we had Professor Akinwumi? He was saying that we needed a national ethos. If there was a national ethos that we all bought into, all governors would be on the same page. But maybe that is where the problem is. Maybe that's where we need to, first of all, focus our attention. You also remember Professor Oyelakin saying just now that we needed to have a vision. Have we crafted a national vision that every Nigerian would buy into and say, okay, this is the direction that we're all going as a people? So if we can get to that point where we have a national ethos, all governors will buy. For instance, we all agree that we have a national anthem, right?
Yeah.
We all agree that to the same national anthem.
We've changed how many times now?
Oh, no, it's only changed once. The national anthem. And the national prayer.
Has changed.
The national prayer is the second verse of the national anthem.
Why did the first one change in the first place?
Well, I guess
people thought that the first one was it made a lot more sense to them. And then you had the second one.
Well, maybe one of the sentiments at the time then was that, it wasn't something wasn't created or composed by Nigerians, and then they came up with a constitution that gave us the national anthem that we use it now.
While they identified that we need that national ethos, we need the national this and several other things, yes, it's good, but we also need to identify how all of those languages you have. How many? 250-something ethnic groups in the country?
More than 400.
They may see it as a challenge, but these things can happen. If we could come together and vote, if we could come together and agree on several other things, we're watching football,
we come together in the National Assembly, Chamberlain.
So
we are together in the National
Why
Assembly.
can't we come together and sort these things
We all
out?
had a common, well, a good number of Nigerians agreed to one president in 1993. We agreed when we wanted to protest about June 12. We agreed about NSAS, so we can agree. The question is, what will we agree on? That will move us forward.
What will it take us to agree on something?
That will move us forward.
Well, we're back here. At least we agree we need to go to break now. So we'll be back in just a moment. Don't go away. All right, let's have another crack at this one. Mr. Owen Woko, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and Attorney General for Akwa Ibom State. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. We're just talking about the judiciary, how so much will depend on the judiciary of this country, if any nation, if the country is supposed to progress from wherever they are. We did hear in the report we just played, when they were reviewing that legal year, talking about people in positions violating or flouting court orders, boasting about it, corruption in the judiciary. Talk to us about those key issues now. How is that prevalent in the judiciary?
Well, good morning, Chamberlain, and good morning, viewers. I hope you are hearing me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Yeah. I think the issue with the judiciary in Nigeria is basically the same issue with the Nigerian society at large. The basic problem, you just mentioned violating of orders or not working in line with the rule of law in Nigeria. The problem basically begins with the head. When government itself tends to act in manners that tend to undermine the authority of the court and the judiciary, that tend to undermine the rule of law, then you expect the ordinary citizen to the same line. The government needs to live above board. Government needs to show compliance with the rule of law. Government needs to show compliance with the Constitution of Nigeria and respect the judiciary. That way, individuals, corporate organizations, and the general citizenry will be forced, compelled to follow the same line. But where we have a situation where government itself, in a number of cases and repeatedly, tends to act in a way that undermines the authority of the court, the authority of judgments, and the rule of law generally, then the problem needs to begin. We need to appraise it. We need to take the interrogation of the issue from the point of what does the leader do? Because what the leader does is what the followers would easily do.
What does it take us to have it the other way around? Because in some other crimes, the people will determine what the government does. Because if the government acts in ways that they find unacceptable, they will not take it. They will stand their ground. What will it take us to get to that level?
Well, what it would take us to get to that level is what we saw in the NSAS situation a couple of months ago. Nigerians have lived for too long in comfort. And therefore, because of that, Nigerians are very complacent. We don't dare to challenge the status quo. We don't dare to challenge government. And because of primordial interest, most of our situations is either we take it from the religious point of view, or we take it from the ethnic point of view, or even political point of view. Nigerians have not come to a point where they can come together and say, this is a collective problem for us. What it would take for the government to act in a way that is in line with the people's interests and the mandate that the people gave to them is for the people themselves to speak out. Actually, as of now, Nigerians are not really speaking out, except for the NSAS challenge that the youths brought to bear on government, which has actually changed the narrative. It's also, in fact, it's redefining the thinking, it's redefining the political context of Nigeria. We keep on accepting almost anything that is thrown at us. Almost everything that government throws at the people is accepted in Nigeria. And until we change that, until we begin to say, when a South man is bad, it's a bad South man, it's a bad Nigerian. When a Northerner is bad, it's a bad Northerner, it's a bad Nigerian. When an Easterner is bad, it's a bad Easterner, it's a bad Nigerian. And we don't begin to say, no, they are saying it because he's a Muslim. They are saying it because it's a Northerner. They are saying it because it's a Westerner. They are saying it because it's a Southerner. That alone is an infection that eats deep into the sentiments of the country, or the fabrics of the country, and will not allow us to make progress. So for Nigeria to begin to work on the path of progress in every dimension, Nigerians must begin to see Nigeria as Nigeria and not as taking it from the perspective of either ethnic or religious or political lineages.
Now, the judiciary, we've talked about judicial reforms for decades. Why is it that in spite of all the talk that has been said, all that's been said about reforming the judiciary and the systems, we're still where we are?
Because what we call reforms are actually rhetorics. We have enough laws in Nigeria to run the judiciary to be a perfect judiciary, just like we have in other countries. The laws are good. But the problem we have with the average system in Nigeria is that somebody picks up a piece of legislation, and what he's looking for is how to undermine it. And I said this with all sense of responsibility. We as lawyers are principal culprits in this direction, because a lawyer is the one that guides his clients mostly on how to escape or avoid the law. So we as lawyers, particularly the senior lawyers, have to begin to think of how to make Nigerian laws work. No matter the level of reforms you want to bring, the law is there is nothing you want to do and you cannot find an excuse under the law. If you want to be a bad person, it's like picking the Bible. You can open the Bible and you say, oh, there is time to kill and there is time to keep alive, and then it's okay because there's time to kill, you want to go and kill. Every person that wants to commit an offense or wants to run a bad system might very easily find a justification within the framework of the law to find that to commit that this thing or undermine that system. So all we need to do is first the strength of character. We need people who now look at Nigeria as Nigeria, who look positively and want to achieve the egalitarian society that we all desire for. If no matter the level of reforms we are discussing in the judiciary, nothing is going to change until the players in the system, both the bar and the bench, and the individuals in the society begin to think of how to make the judiciary to work in the interest of the general populace in Nigeria, both the government and the governed. So I don't want us to continue to play this story of judicial reforms. There is nothing to reform except we reform our mindsets.
All right, well, we've got your colleague, Mr. Nelson Quick, is joining us as well, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. For the reforms in the judiciary to occur, as Mr. Nwoko said, does the bar and the bench need to look in the mirror?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chamberlain. I totally agree with the Honorable Attorney General in what he has presented. Like I've always said, and I will keep saying, our greatest challenge as a people is not in the want of laws, rules, and regulations. It has to do with our attitudinal disposition to the workings of these laws. Now, we've come up with several reforms, but the question you first ask yourself is, why are we reforming our laws? We're reforming our laws in order to establish an effective and efficient system. Now, justice has two segments. You have justice administration, and then you have justice delivery. Now, oftentimes, what we do, I would describe it as being cosmetic. Now, the laws are there, the rules are there, but we make it very difficult and arduous for these rules to have the effectiveness that they need. The idea behind all of this is for justice administration to be effective, so as to ensure that there is harmonious justice delivery. Now, if you break the components down into two parts, what you see are micro and macro problems. A lot, the Honorable Attorney General has also identified. Why is it that laws don't work in this side of the world? The reason for that is, again, our attitude. Now, a lot of people tend to get away with a lot of things. And I'll give you a perfect example. What is wrong, for instance, we have a president that has committed several constitutional breaches. You have a National Assembly that can rise up to the occasion because the Constitution is supreme and has binding authority on all persons and authority. Now, if the president cannot be impeached on account of the constitutional breaches that he has committed, then what are we talking about? You have a governor who has also done certain things that are considered to be unconstitutional and not in the best interest of the state. You have a National Assembly that cannot impeach him. You have a chief justice or a chief judge who does things that are considered unconstitutional. But again, you have an NJC that is also polarized. I also find it very difficult because the Chief Justice, for instance, of Nigeria is the chairman of the National Judicial Council, right? The Chief Judge of the state is also involved in the State Judicial Reform Commission. So you have a situation where human beings will always be human beings. But the only thing that can checkmate them is when the law is allowed to work. But the law cannot work by itself. It can only work by persons and authority. Look at what is happening today in the US. Every human being has a tendency to want to be recalcitrant and to want to be disobedient. But the law has to checkmate the person by having very strong institutions. Do we have strong institutions in Nigeria? The answer is no. And so we go back again until we reform the people. It will be difficult to reform the law. Everything we are doing now is simply cosmetic. But to a large extent, at least there's some improvement here and there. Look at the appointment of the president of the Court of Appeal and the impact right now it has made, at least in terms of justice delivery as regards appeals in Lagos State. That's an effective move by constituting extra panels to ensure that backlog of appeals are dealt with. And so to a large extent, there's still room for improvement, but the idea really is that we need to reform the people in order for the law to work. And like he already pointed out, the culprits really are actually the lawyers, both senior and junior members of the bar, if I can describe it in that manner. Chief Olusegun Obasanjo just said that if you have 10 lawyers in the room to advise you, you might likely end up having 10 reasons why you should obey or disobey.
Well, I don't know if that came to play, Mr. Quakers, in this circumstance that I want to raise now, because it would seem to me and perhaps to a number of other people that we're picky about the judgments that we execute, as we are picky about the laws that we want to obey, what aspect of the Constitution that we want to line up with. For instance, the budget is a law, always obeyed in breach, if I can use that, if I can say it that way, because some would say almost 100% of expenditure is the expenditure part of the law is executed. Hardly do we ever get to the point where the capital expenditure part of the law is executed. Another one, and I think I would want to ask Mr. Nwoko this, is that at the state level, the Constitution provides for a local government system. The state governors themselves hardly ever are able to live up to the full tenets of the Constitution in that regard. So if we find it difficult to obey the Constitution itself, the ground norm, what's the court judgment to obey when the ground norm itself is obeyed in breach, Mr. Nwoko? Okay, well, maybe Mr. Quakers, you want to take that on, first of all?
Absolutely. I was really excited the way the question was asked, and I commend you for that question. You see, the greatest challenge, once again, is the same attitude. Now, the maiden of justice wears a blindfold, and the reason for that is there should be no primordial consideration of sentiments in justice delivery. Now, you have a situation where there's a law in place, the Fiscal Responsibility Bill, and it is also act rather. It's also to ensure that there's accountability in government spending. Now, the National Assembly, I've not seen the National Assembly raise questions as regards budgets that have been presented in terms of implementation. Now, a particular budget year is expired or has expired, and then another budget is now presented. But no question is asked in terms of infrastructural development. Now, what have you used the money to do? No question is being asked. So you keep approving budget without necessarily seeing. But I recall that the current speaker, after inauguration, did say something that really touched me. And that is the time has come for the Nigerian government to also embark on development. How much have you set aside, for instance, for research? How much have you set aside, for instance, for education? How much have you set aside now, for instance, for technology? But nobody is asking questions because the president is seen as higher mind. Somebody once described governance in Nigeria, and particularly as regards the presidency, that the Nigerian president is the most powerful. I beg to disagree. The Nigerian president is also subject to the constitution, just like the governors. Anyone who has been donated some authority from the Nigerian constitution is subject to it. And where you violate, there are checks and balances. That's the essence of the constitution. So I commend you for that question. It is again up to our own people to rise up to the occasion and ensure that the constitution is obeyed to the letter. And if anyone is found wanting in any area of observing clear and unambiguous provisions of the constitution, there are also provisions in the constitution in terms of sanctions to be taken, steps to be taken to bring the person to book, to bring the person to sanity. And so for me, again, it borders on the same attitude that we've always talked about. It's an attitudinal thing. Barack Obama, some years ago, when he visited Ghana, said Africa's greatest challenge is the want of institutions, strong institutions. We build persons and not institutions. Tomorrow, an attorney general will go. Another attorney general will be appointed. But the attorney general's position is not one where he should be subservient to the president. His responsibility is to the Nigerian constitution and Nigerian people. Look at what is happening today in the U.S., where an attorney general has resigned. And I recall that when Mimo Ogunde, as attorney general of Ogun State, also resigned when he realized that he wasn't working in tandem with the governor, when he realized that his position and the professional competence would be questioned. He resigned. And I think the time has come for us to now begin to experience that as well. On the grounds of professional competence, on the grounds of professionalism, you can walk away. Except we see it as a do or die appointment, that your life is dependent on the appointment or on the office that you occupy. But
Mr. Quakers, what happens? Yes. Is it out of place for the bar, for instance, to put their foot down and keep doing that time and again whenever they feel that there's a breach somewhere from whosoever, from whichever quarters, no matter whose ox is God?
I totally agree with you on that. Yes, I totally agree with you. But we're getting there, at least with the current president of the bar and the steps that he has taken, his pronouncement as regards government's responsibility, and sometimes the disobedience to government, to orders of court. He's made a number of statements in that regard. It's now for us to put our money where our mouth is. And I'm happy that is coming up now, because it's never really happened in the last couple of years. Well, now you have a president of the bar who is also speaking, who is also addressing these issues. I remember growing up as a young lawyer, we had a vibrant bar that we view from court appearance. And I remember the Honorable Justice Jega of blessed memory, when he was sitting as a federal high court judge in Kwara State, Ilori, he had issues and the bar rose up to support him. And I think the time has come. When the court order is disobeyed, the bar must rise up. You have an Attorney General of the Federation, who is the Chief Law Officer of the Federation. He should also advise the government. You cannot disobey an order of court. It is calling for anarchy. It's calling for chaos. And I'm happy with the position of the bar right now as regards disobedience of orders of court, as regards recklessness and executive rascality and disobedience. I'm happy with the position the president of the bar currently is taking. And I think the time really has come for us all to rise up to it, so that we avert another end SARS. It will no longer be end SARS now, it might be end government.
The things that comes to mind about all of these issues that we have raised, Mr. Quakers, is the people. We have talked
Yes.
about, we're talking about the leaders, we're talking about those in the executive, those in the legislature, and those in the judiciary doing the needful, and the established, bodies like the Nigerian Bar Association and all of that. But ultimately, it's about the people. If you cannot break it into smithereens so that the people can get the full value of it, there we have a problem. Now, how do we now begin to communicate a sense of judicial responsibility to the people when we are having these problems at the top? Because irrespective of what the leadership is doing, the law is very effective on the people. The law on internally generated revenue is very effective with the people. Wandering and all of those basic things, they are actively affected by officers of the law. So how do we ensure that the people themselves can buy into this sense of judicial responsibility so that when they themselves find themselves in power, they will do the needful?
Thank you so much for that question. I recall a friend of mine once said this: when the common man accesses justice and is able to walk away with his head high to say, yes, justice has not only been seen to be done, it has indeed been done, he would then have confidence in the justice administration. Now, but the question is, the current structure, does that allow for it? If a poor man and a rich man interface with justice, how will the scale of justice tilt? Not based on justice in itself, not based on facts in itself, not based on the need to do justice, but based on inducement and the tilting of the scale in favor of the rich. Now, if that trend continues, it simply means that the common man on the street will never have confidence in the judiciary. Now, we are the product of our society. Someone who has had an interface with justice and realized that justice delivery was skewed to favor a particular person will seek and pursue power and relevance. When that occasion arises, you will do everything within your means to also ensure that the perks of office that your predecessor in office enjoyed, you also enjoy. Now, we're exposed to all kinds of vagaries of the society. People sometimes use their tools, sometimes use their means to ensure that the scale of justice tilts in their favor. On a lighter note, a colleague of mine once said, the maiden of justice globally wears a blindfold in order to ensure that justice is delivered without fear or favor or influence. But in Nigeria, that veil is always lifted to see who is before justice. And if that trend continues, there's no way any common man on the street will have confidence in our justice delivery system because it's skewed to favor those who have. But I think the time has come for us to continue to enlighten the Nigerian public. The Nigerian Law School has a part to play in all of this. The Nigerian Bar Association has a lot to play on, particularly the human rights component of the Nigerian Bar, the human rights committee has a role to play in all of this. The Nigerian judiciary itself also has a role to play. So if all of us are involved in enlightening the Nigerian public and they do not only see it as being done, but they can see that indeed justice is being dispensed without fear or favor, then the Nigerian people will also then have confidence. Because the real fear is this: if I do something and I know I cannot get away with it, then there will be no need for any other person to want to toe that path. But the reason why this has continued for so long is because once you do it, you know you'll get away with it. All it requires is just influence and knowing the right people to call. And then it's all over. Like you recall, a few minutes ago when you were addressing us, you said that Chief Ololani Pekwese and Mr. Femi Falon said there are enough laws that covers the field, that some of these governors do not even know the power that they possess. Same thing with the Nigerian people. There are many laws that the Nigerian people are also empowered to deploy. But because these laws have also not been relayed to them, that's why they also do not know their right. How many Nigerians have a copy of the Constitution? Have we succeeded, for instance, in translating the provision of the Constitution from English to our native languages, into Yoruba, into Hausa, to Igbo? And until we begin to do that, we haven't started. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Onwoko, go ahead and give us your concluding thought, because, I mean, if the governors don't know some of these laws, that the powers that they've got, can't we then blame the attorneys general of those states for those?
Well, I think the issue is a bit more complex than just picking up the office of the Attorney General to blame even the governor. You see, today we have the Governors Forum, and the Governors Forum is a body of all the governors in the country. But how many times can the governors come together as a team, as a group, which was the essence of forming that Governors Forum, to take a decision that strengthens the Governors Forum, without party sentiments coming into play? So that's why even among attorneys general, see, I have been attorney general. How many times have we been able to meet as a body to speak dispassionately, shorn of political interest, party lines, to say this is in the interest of Nigeria, let us look at this law as it is? So the issue is more complex than just the governor of today or the attorney general of today, because it's very endemic. And to cure the problem, we would really need to go back and check ourselves. Like I said earlier, sentiments are playing major roles in our decision making. Sentiments of politics, sentiments of religion, sentiments of ethnic. So all those things have to be taken together so that if we break this and then begin to build stronger institutions, including the judiciary, when the institutions are stronger than the individuals, we would have said, okay, we can make a headway. But until that is done, well, God will help Nigeria to continue to move. I hope that within our lifetime, something positive will happen.
Well, God will have to walk through us all if it's to help. Well, we do thank you for your thought this morning, Uwe Nwoko, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice for Akwa Ibom State. We also do thank you, Mr. Norris Quakers, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. All right, so there you go. Let's take a look. Do we still have some comments coming through from them?
Well, there are so many on the Twitter thread that you can choose yourself, but we're
okay, so we'll let you do that. And yeah, we always appreciate when you do that. But thank you all for watching today. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
And I'm Ayo Magide. Do enjoy your day and please remain safe.